See, I'd been fantasizing about my first dungeon experience for a few years now. I knew what I wanted. I wanted to be bound to a St. Andrew's cross, flogged, orgasm control play, and domed. I just didn't realize it would be by a dominatrix and with my partner, Scott. In retrospect, it's interesting to see how many things in my life have led up to that very night. Welcome to the Open Bedroom Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Kalo. Welcome to conversations about open relationships, online dating, conscious uncoupling, and creating the relationship that truly aligns for you. I'm really excited for today because I'm going to be talking to you about my night in a dungeon with a dominatrix. So here's what happened. Well, let me start with, I want to read you my story. After it happened, I immediately woke up the next morning and got on a plane and went to Seattle and got on a ship and went to Alaska. And so as I was on that 2 to 3 hour flight, I just wrote. I wrote all about it. And so I wanted to not forget any details. And so I thought this will be really fun to just read to you. So I wanted to let you know, as I went to this event, I wore this and I wore these tights, and they are ripped, and it's part of the scene. I wonder if you can see. Part of the scene is the ripping, and I'll explain that in a few, but you can see like they're just ripped to shreds, which is really hot. So I wore these red fishnets. Okay. I'm ready. I hope you enjoy the story. My night in a dungeon with a dominatrix. One of my big sexual bucket list items was to visit a dungeon, and last night I got to cross it off my list. It all started with an invitation to view a friend's sensual shibari class with an opportunity to stay and play that night. I jumped on the opportunity, grabbed a hotel room, and because this was the night before I left for an Alaskan cruise, I booked airfare from the local airport and started dreaming up of all I wanted to play that night. See, I'd been fantasizing about my first dungeon experience for a few years now. I knew what I wanted. I wanted to be bound to a St. Andrew's cross, flogged, orgasm control play, and domed. I just didn't realize it would be by a dominatrix and with my partner, Scott. In retrospect, it's interesting to see how many things in my life have led up to that very night. Handcuffs. When Scott and I first opened our relationship, we dated a couple for a while. This couple was really into BDSM, and the husband makes gorgeous leather items like paddles, handcuffs, etc. And he and I had a special connection that has morphed into a really beautiful friendship. He made me custom cuffs with peacock blue thread that I just love and was waiting to christen in a very special way. Friendship. I've talked about how I met my local priestess group last fall and made so many beautiful friendships. On the second to last day, I connected with a woman who would be the dominatrix in my dungeon experience. She has red hair and incredible green piercing eyes, gorgeous curves, and loads of sex appeal. She has a presence about her, one of competence and control. I think she's amazing, and I have so much admiration and respect for her. Partnership. I had no idea that my sensual partner, Scott, would one day become so deliciously doming, but we've grown into the role together. There's nothing more than I crave than having his hands on me, my throat, pulling my hair, or smacking my ass. He is in complete control, and I happily give it all away when we're in the bedroom and I just want to be taken. It's so exciting to watch him step into his masculine, topping, dominating self and allow that primal side to push through. I trust him 1,000,000%. He knows what I desire, and I love that he takes me to the deepest parts of where pleasure lives in my body. So we found ourselves in a dungeon, surrounded by an interesting group of kinky people, various BDSM pieces of furniture, mounts, hooks, and more. Watching my dom friend perform her sensual shibari scene was incredibly arousing. Her sub and her had such a beautiful connection. Tears ran down my face as I watched them move with each other as a pair, as one. The sub happily relinquishing control and the dom confidently taking it. It was a dance of desire and trust and love. I wanted that. My dominatrix friend messaged me later that afternoon and she said, I want to dom you tonight. Do you have any limits, hard no's, or anything you want to avoid? What is it that you're desiring, Jennifer? Let's make tonight really special for you. And I'll incorporate Scott into the scene too. I told her what I desired, that pain was not something I actually liked, and that I was open to trying new things. The dungeon. When we all met back up at the dungeon later that night, I had no idea what I'd be witnessing or walking into. My dom friend gave us a tour of the small and large dungeons. There were a handful of St. Andrew's crosses, a doctor's play area, a Dexter room, flogging benches, a stage with suspended arm restraints, electric play, several beds, and more. People were voyeuring, moaning, yelling, spanking, flogging, crying out. It was a crescendo of pleasure and pain, and I was smack dab in the middle of all of it, taking it all in. The large dungeon was pretty packed, so we ended up playing in the smaller one where the mood was sensual, just perfect for Scott and I. They had one St. Andrew's cross, so we claimed it and we set up there. My dom friend took out all of her toys, demoing for me the ones I'd never seen, allowing me to experience the thud of a wooden paddle, the scratchy sensation of finger claws, the softness of the fur on a paddle. We pulled out everything that was a yes for me, and she put away all of the no's. I said yes to a thuddy paddle and floggers, things I'd never experienced before, vampire claws. And we laid everything out by the cross. My dominatrix friend stood in front of me, held me in her arms, and connected with me, setting an intention for our session that evening, a safe space, all for my pleasure, all for me. Yum. Scott lovingly bound my wrists with my beautiful handmade cuffs and chained me to the cross, pulled my skirt down so I was left in my black lace bodysuit and red fishnets. My hair pulled into a tight bun on my head and out of the way. I was facing the cross, arms and legs spread out, my love in front of me, my dominatrix behind me. She started out by squeezing my arms, back, sides, legs, firmly, up and down, up and down. This brought blood into my limbs, telling my body it was time to wake up and that play was about to happen. Then she ran her hands up and down my body, held me tightly, connecting with me again. Grabbing a set of floggers, she seductively ran them up and down my body, caressing me with it. Starting at my shoulders, she began to lightly double flog me, meaning she had a flogger in each hand. The tingly, thuddy feeling was amazing, euphoric. She started to increase speed and firmness. It's hard to describe the feeling. With each flog, my body was doing this mini release. You know that feeling when you almost fall and your body does that half in, half out, all tingly, all over thing? It's kind of like that, but euphoric instead of scary. My dom played with different floggers, moving from my upper back to my ass, stopping to caress those same places after each set of flogging, or grabbing a metal implement to add cold sensations. Scott switched her places at one point, and she got out these amazing finger claws. I call them vampire claws. Dragging them up and down my body. They felt amazing. The shapeshifter in me really loves the back and forth between the thuddy, the soft, the cold, the scratchy, the stingy, the sensual. It kept me in my body and completely present. After about 45 minutes of this, which felt like 10 minutes, they turned me around on the cross so I was facing up, with my hands chained at the top of each side of the X again. This time, Scott led. He was the dom, and he took my magic wand out to play. He was in control now. And this is where the orgasm play comes in. Scott took his hands and ripped my red fishnets, exposing myself to him and the rest of the room. He pulled my bodysuit to the side and began using the vibrator on me. My dominatrix was behind the cross, embracing my arms and chest, my head, teasing in between my breasts and caressing my neck and face, moaning into my ear as I moaned from the vibrating pleasure. Scott increased the speed and intensity, and I moaned out an orgasmic pleasure coming on the cross. He didn't stop and left the big head of the vibe right on my clit, and I orgasmed hard and loud. Scott asked me what was happening. He ordered me to tell him out loud. "I'm coming," I said loudly enough for him to hear over the music and the other sexy freaks sharing our dungeon. After the second orgasm, I was exhausted, happy, euphoric, and ready to come off the cross. We took a few moments of aftercare. Both the dominatrix and the dom, Scott, held me. We held each other, affirming our gratefulness to each other for sharing such a special scene together. Then we cleaned everything off, packed up our toys, and went back to our hotel room, me and Scott, not the dominatrix, to sleep for a few hours before my flight to Alaska. My night in the dungeon will never be forgotten. Hey there. Did you know that I do online coaching? Yes, I do online coaching in the sex and relationship space. Some of the topics that are near and dear to my heart are open relationships. So that includes polyamory, swinging, or what we call the lifestyle. I also love conversations around online dating. We're talking Bumble, Tinder, Field, and more. And then the last thing that is really passionate and close to my heart is conscious uncoupling. That means we get to break up with people with love and respect, with dignity and hope. We get to create a life for our children that gets to be a little bit different. We can do things better than we have in the past. So if any of these topics sound interesting to you and you'd love to get some coaching from me, check out the link in the show notes or the link in my bio for more information on coaching with Jen.